I worked in consulting for 9 years before quitting and becoming a freelance consultant in 2017. I want to help more people think about how they can shift from places like consulting or other fields to become freelance consultants. One thing that holds people back, however, is that they have a hard time understanding whether they really want to go out on their own, what it might feel like, and how they would go about navigating such a path. This is what I want to talk about in today's video. I want to talk about, first, how do you actually assess your desire as to whether or not you actually want to take such a leap. I have 5 great questions which will help you think about this. Second, what is it really like when you leave your job and you go and work independently? It was actually a jolt of reality for me, shifting from being employed to self-employed. The shift was far greater than I actually imagined. And third, I want to talk about how to actively shape an identity as somebody that's navigating an independent path and some of the mistakes that people make when they first take a leap. Before we dive in, I just want to say that I think freelance consulting is one of the greatest opportunities for knowledge professionals in today's world, especially former strategy consultants. Far too few people think about taking a leap for only even 1 or 2 years in their career to work on their own. I think the upsides in terms of learning more about yourself, learning to grapple with the uncertainty of life, and also exposing yourself to the immense opportunities in today's world are enormous. So how do you know if you want to take a leap? How do you know if you want to shift from a full-time job to becoming an independent consultant? I've found that there are 5 questions that are really effective in terms of pressure testing people's actual interest and commitment. These questions: first, how long are you willing to commit to this path? Second, how many months are you willing to go without earning an income? Third, how much money do you want to make? Annually, hourly, monthly, every 18 months, every few years? When will you know that you are succeeding? When will you declare victory? Is it a state of mind? Is it a financial metric? And fifth, when do you know when to quit? Are there financial metrics you'll watch? Is it a mental state? Are you struggling? What is it? Defining this can be super helpful. Now, I'm not going to go into much depth into these questions, but I hope they help you think in a more clear way about what an independent freelancer path might look like and what might be some of the challenges. These questions are really designed to pressure test your own fears, your own insecurities, and your own actual desires for wanting to be on a path like this. After answering these questions, if you still find you're super excited about taking a path like this, it's probably meant for you. That's probably a good sign. And if you have responses to these questions, I'd love if you drop them in the comments. I love hearing how people think about these questions and how it helps them refactor how they think about the risks and the upsides of such a leap. Ultimately, one of the biggest shifts is the shift from a full-time worker to an independent worker. You're shifting from somebody that has a stable existence, you sort of know where you're headed, the paths, other people doing similar things, to really carving an N of 1 path of your own, which can be overwhelming. Which brings us to the second thing I want to talk about today, which is, what does it actually feel like to be on an independent path? What does it feel like to carve your own path? Short answer is, it feels really scary at first. It's uncertain, it's uncomfortable, and you don't really know how to get your bearings and how to carve your own path and how to define your own work days and orientation to the world. This can be very unsettling. And another thing that makes it difficult is that you're often leaving a fixed identity. And many people who become freelancers do that because they want to loosen the grip of that worker identity on themselves. But at the same time, as soon as you're making a leap, you need to start telling everyone that I'm a freelancer, I'm available for work. So it creates this tension for people, especially at first. This is something I really experienced, is when you need to over communicate that I'm a freelancer and I'm available for hire and I am interested in making it work on this path. At the same time, when inside you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. I don't know if I have what it takes. Those first few months are so hard. And A few things that can help with this are just putting public commitments out there. One thing I have people do is change their LinkedIn title. I'm a freelancer and looking for work. Another thing you can do is email friends and family. This is something I did early on in my path, and I said, hey, I'm taking this leap. I don't really know where I'm headed, but I could use some support. Putting more feelers out there, planting more seeds such that other people know, hey, he's available. Hey, I could reach out to him if I have a friend who needs support or things like that. Super important. Other things that can be helpful, especially before you take the leap, are coming up with a name for a firm. You may or may not want to actually stick with a brand name, and I'll explore that in another video. But doing that can hold you accountable. It can raise the stakes on yourself. It's a form of commitment. It's a form of saying, yes, I'm all in. Here's my brand. This is what I stand for. I'm doing something. It's also a signal to others that you've made a shift. You're operating in a new mode, and it's sort of a way to create excitement. Other ways you can do this are things like business cards, creating presentation decks that you can send to potential clients for your company, and logos and things like that as a way of making that shift stronger, at least to the external communities and people you know in your life. But like I said, this is hard, and embracing this identity is only a first step. Ultimately, working on your own and carving a path as an independent freelancer is a constant process of figuring out who you are, who you want to show up with, what kinds of work you want to do, and how you can design your life to make all those things work. One mistake I see when people leave is that they think they need to be businesses. They think of themselves like they're BCG or McKinsey, a large consulting firm. They look at their sites and they say they have all these services. They have these menu of options. But if you really dig into these menus, they're vague. They're ambiguous, because at McKinsey and BCG, they're selling based on brand and trusted relationships. As a new independent freelancer, you don't have a brand, you don't have trusted relationships yet. So you actually need to communicate more clearly. What you're really doing as a freelancer is selling yourself. You're not putting out services or a very clear process that you're offering. At first, you're going to be selling yourself. When I quit my job, I was selling Paul Millard generally knows how to do a lot of stuff. You're taking a bet on me that I can help you solve your problems. And in my first year, I worked on such a wider range of things than I did in my formal consulting career. I did stuff like web design and web development. I did training. I did coaching. I also worked with CEOs and founders, helping them shape strategy and things like that, but I was much more hands-on and in the weeds too. And over time, your conception of what you're good at, what you want to do, and what you like doing shifts. The best conception of this is this beautiful diagram from Tom Critchlow's post, Rejecting Specialization, who is also one of the best writers on navigating the inner game of freelance consulting. I'll link up to a lot of Tom's posts below and some of my favorites. But this diagram is powerful. It says that we need to search for the right combination of what you're good at, what the market wants, and an identity that gives you energy. This is slightly different than the traditional framing that says you should really just do what you're good at, what the market wants, and what you're passionate about. That framing starts with this conception of like interests, and then works backward and says you can define work that fits into that interest bucket. I don't really buy that framing. I think Tom hits the nail on the head, and it's no surprise because he's super reflective and one of the best writers in this space. He says, what is an identity that gives you energy? I call this finding a mode. What is the mode I can show up in such that I can do work where I can continue to stay energized? And that's really the game of being a freelancer or independent worker, just to keep the game going, right? And I think it's a mistake to think I need to do only one thing. Some people thrive doing that as a freelancer, but I'm not one of those people, and I don't think the majority of people are wired that way. Most people do a variety of things. I think a good frame for this for me has been, how do I want to spend a month? What are the variety of activities that I can do in a given month? or even a longer period like 3 months, such that if I continue to do those things over the long term, I will remain energized. And it's an identity I can keep showing up as a certain type of person that is sustainable. I'm not going to burn out. One reason this path offers such tremendous upsides for people is that traditional career paths are very constraining on the identity front. You know exactly what you're supposed to care about, what people like you are supposed to be aiming at, and what success looks like. On your own, you need to define all those things, which can be overwhelming, but it's also a great thing if you enjoy the process of figuring those things out. I tend to be what Tom calls a weird consultant. I like a range of activities, and I've done and continue to do many different things in every project I've done over the past 5 years. I love what he says about this. There are those who are weirder, less legible, harder to define. Folks whose website doesn't have a tight "I do X for Y." These people likely project a weird sensibility via their online writing and persona, building a body of work that points to a kind of vibe, right? And this is a real opportunity that people don't think about when they're thinking about freelancing, is what is the identity you can show up in that you can keep getting energy from? What is the vibe you can embrace such that you can do a wide and weird range of activities and still stay energized on such a path? I hope these 3 things convince you that freelancing not as scary as you think. Or you came away answering the questions at the beginning and saying, not for me. That's great too. I still think freelancing is one of the greatest opportunities in today's world for learning about yourself, growing as a person, and taking advantage to some of the interesting and fast-changing opportunities in today's world. I'm going to continue to share more videos about what I've learned from freelancing, and I'd appreciate questions. You can see more about freelancing, carving your own path, and some of my experiences leaving consulting in this video up here. I'd appreciate it if you subscribed and followed along. You can do that over here, and thank you for watching. Have a good day.